New York, it's a state split right down the middle with its population and sociopolitical and economic differences. With this division in the modern era, and especially within the last 5 to 10 years, there has been a rapidly growing push to split the state between the New York City metropolitan area and the rest of upstate New York. Though most would be very quick to draw an immediate comparison or even full-on conflation between this concept and the concept to split California into multiple states, or for that matter, making the state of Lincoln or the state of Jefferson. This is actually a very inaccurate comparison because not only is culturally it very different, and sociopolitically actually it's quite different than those divergences in politics. It is also very economically different. And the rural part of New York State and the greater Northeast region of the country is, of course, far more heavily populated, with far more larger cities. Let's start with the state of New York. This would include the entirety of the New York City metropolitan area of New York State, from Long Island, Staten Island, Manhattan, and the rest of New York City proper, up to the northern boundaries of Dutchess, Ulster, and Sullivan counties. The population in 2023 would actually be 14,371,585 people in this incredibly tiny amount of land area. It, of course, would have the capital in New York City proper, very likely, of course, in Manhattan. And of course, it still would retain at least a top 3 largest economy out of all states in the entirety of the Union. And with just over 14 million people, it would also be one of the most populous states in the nation by far. New York State would also happen to have some rather nice natural areas and some historical sites that are on the very far outskirts of the northern portions of the New York City metropolitan area as well. Now, of course, we move on to upstate New York. What would the name of this new state be? Well, very likely New Amsterdam. As far as I have seen, this is the most common name suggestion I have seen for it. And it does have great historical context because before England even first colonized, it was actually originally colonized by none other than the Dutch. The state of New Amsterdam also could have potentially other alternate names: Catskill, Adirondack, or of course, Upper New York. Though my personal preference, for accuracy and more specifically for extreme fun, is of course New Hampsterjam. It would have a total population of 6,076,606 people, and its economy would still actually be pretty stable and pretty dang good comparatively across the board, especially with the more rural states that we currently have, and also the more rural states that could be made from various states splitting, like again, say, Lincoln and Jefferson. Its main biggest cities, of course, would be Albany, Syracuse, Rochester, Binghamton, Elmira, and of course, Buffalo. New Amsterdam would contain most of New York State's biggest tourist draws outside of the New York City metropolitan area. Besides the obvious Niagara Falls, it would also include the likes of Lake Champlain, the various national and state parks for the Catskills, the Finger Lakes, and of course the various wilderness areas in the eastern portion of the state, just southwest of Lake Champlain. It would also remain the home of some of the nation's biggest and most successful colleges, namely in Syracuse, but of course also in the likes of Buffalo. It would also remain one of the most important states for military, especially with the famous Fort Drum being up around the Lake Ontario region. The next one is likely rather unexpected, but it is one of the more common, in fact, one of the most common, suggested state divisions and splits out there. There is 2 main concepts for this state split: splitting the state of Michigan into the upper mitten and, of course, the peninsula, or just the Marquette Peninsula alone. Of course, we also have the longest standing suggestion, which is naturally to give the state of Wisconsin the entirety of the Marquette Peninsula. The state of Superior, in my current concept, which includes the Upper Mitten and the Marquette Peninsula, would include a total population in 2023 of 1.48 million people. Its biggest cities would be Traverse City, Marquette, Sault Ste. Marie, and Muskegon. Arguably, its most important city would be its main tourism hub, which I would argue is Mackinac City. And yes, it's spelled Mackinac, but it's Mackinac. Along, of course, with Mackinac would also be Presque Isle. I'm sure I said that very wrong, because again, it's French, and I don't like French. It's terrible. I don't know it well enough, but I would assume that's Presque, but then I'm probably mixing too much Spanish influence in there. Presque? I have no idea. Presque? I'm not even going to try anymore. But those would be the two most important cities in regards to tourism, in my opinion, for the state of Superior. And of course, Marquette is a major college. So as a result, it has such a high reputation and such a high attendance that you should not be surprised to know it would still remain one of the most important college towns and colleges in the nation, thus giving the state of Superior a huge boon. The state of Superior, similar to New York and most other state split concepts in this country, is based mainly on sociopolitical differences, alongside, of course, economic differences and economic exploitation from the major main metropolitan area of a state. In this case, with Michigan, it is split between the south of the state and the Upper Mitten and Peninsula, in terms of not just, again, sociopolitical divide, but especially economic investment, funding, and support. These were two more state split proposals. Once again, just like my last edition of this video, let me know in the comments below what your opinions are of this and what you think down below. I will be doing another edition of this video, and it will be splitting the rest of California up into more states, since that is about as common now and as well known as the proposal to create the state of Jefferson, which is not just California, of course, but also Oregon. Again, if you want to know more about that, just click on the upper right-hand corner or go into the description below to check out that video.